I never really could entertain the idea that, oh, this is going to turn out well.
Hello, and welcome to another new episode of Live Through That. I'm your host, Mike Hipple, and on this podcast, we dig a little deeper into the pivotal moments that shaped the lives of some of my favorite artists from the 80s and 90s. This week, I'm so excited to have Mark Oliver Everett on the show, better known as E from the band Eels. From Beautiful Freak to Electro-Shock Blues and beyond, E has built one of the most distinctive catalogs in modern rock. Now, with his new project, The Boo Boos, he's exploring a whole new sound and creative direction. Before we dive into that, let's go back to the beginning, to those small moments that end up becoming the pivotal ones that define a career.
The first thing that jumps out at me when I think of pivotal moments is when I was still living in Virginia, and I was about 21, maybe 20, and I was just spinning my wheels, didn't have any ideas about the future or what to do. I'd gone to college because that's what my friends were doing, but I really had no interest in it. And I was just doing that, but I didn't enjoy it. And then I had a girlfriend at the time who one day we were just driving somewhere, and we were talking about what the hell's in the future or whatever. And she said, why don't you do something with music? You're good at it. And it had never occurred to me till I was kind of a big fish in a little pond in Virginia. I was a drummer in a band that played at all the parties in my senior year in high school, and then then we graduated to like biker bars in Virginia and Maryland, but I never thought I could make a living out of this. That just seemed like an impossible pipe dream that I never even considered. But something struck me the moment she said that. It just sunk in I don't have any other ideas. And as far-fetched as it seems, why not pursue it? And so I did. And then I had tunnel vision, and it just became like a mission. And and the whole time it was a mission, which was for several miserable years of missionary work, if you could call it that. And I never really could entertain the idea that, oh, this is going to turn out well, or that I'm actually going to make a living at this. It always seemed like an impossible dream. It always seemed crazy to me. But I just kept doing it because I didn't have any other plan. I didn't know what else to do. It was this or nothing. And maybe that's why it worked. I don't know. I mean, definitely a lot of it was just luck, but it was also, there's a song on one of my recent albums. It's actually the last song on my last album called Let's Be Lucky. And what I mean by that is, work your ass off to get into a position where you can be lucky. And I do think that was the case with me during all these years of toiling. And, I worked several jobs. I was a substitute teacher, and by day, and at night I was a busboy at a restaurant with, the kids that I was bossing around at school during the day were bossing me around as the busboy at night. And then, I was just saving up money to move to LA. I just kind of tossed a coin between LA or New York. Those are the music places. And I thought, LA, it's further away. I just wanted to get as far away as possible. And it was crazy because I didn't know anybody, but I did it. And I had several really rough years, really struggling, just working shitty jobs I hated. And then miraculously something happened, which I guess would be the next pivotal moment. Yeah, so what happened was eventually I met someone who wanted, an A&R guy, John Carter, who wanted to sign me to Atlantic. He liked my demos that I passed him. I was doing what they call the Nashville handshake, Well, I didn't know it was called that at the time. Every time you met anybody in the music business, you slip them your latest cassette while you're shaking their hand, the Nashville handshake. But so he really liked it, but the president of Atlantic didn't agree with him, and that was the end of that. But then what happened was, so Carter had a garage sale. This is the garage sale is the other pivotal moment I think of, and it was a Saturday morning, and he had a friend who was a producer, David Sigerson, who had produced a, a Bangles record. I think the big one, the one with the Eternal Flame, maybe, and I think Tori Amos's first record or some of it. And he came to the garage sale, and Carter said, "Oh, you should check out this kid that he's been giving me his demos. I like him." And he slipped the Nashville handshake to Davitt, and Davitt really liked it. And this is where luck really comes into it. That week, Davitt, who was a producer but never worked at a record company, got offered the job of being president of Polydor Records. And so he signed me to Polydor because he had that power all of a sudden. And that is, sheer stroke of luck. But, again, after like working my ass off to get myself into a hopefully lucky situation, and luck finally struck.
Mark, going under the name E, released 2 records with Polydor, A Man Called E and Broken Toy Shop.
That was a whole new devastation to, actually get to do 2 records. And it was just so great because like my first meeting with David, shortly after he got the job, I had breakfast with him and I told him, I grew up like loving artists like Leon Russell and the Beatles and people who were always kind of evolving and changing and kind of following their artistic whims. And he said, "I think you're going to get a chance to do that." And that was just the greatest thing anyone had ever said to me. And then when the second record came out, it came out in December, which is a weird time to put out a record by a new artist. It was back then anyway. And at the same time of it coming out at an awkward time on the calendar, the Polygram label group that Polydor was part of crumbled and was dismantled. And so I was promptly dropped. And that was a whole new devastation to get to do that and then lose it. So that was tough. And then it was all Carter's idea. He said, "Well, I know what you're going to do now. You're going to start a band." I said, "I am?" He said, "Yep, and it's going to be called the Eels." I said, "Why?" He said, "Because then your band records will be near your solo records, the 2 that you already made, in the record store." Which, of course, when the first Eels record came out and I went to an actual record store to see if they had it, I quickly learned, Carter was completely wrong about that. The E section is far away from the Eels section. There's a hell of a lot of Eagles and Earth, Wind, and Fire records in between. Didn't think it through.
Eels released Beautiful Freak in 1996 and then put out what some consider to be one of his best works, 1998's Electro-Shock Blues. This proved to be another pivotal moment in his career.
One angle of that pertains to these other pivotal moments is the part of the story with me and Carter, who was not only my manager, and we were enjoying success with the first Eels album, Beautiful Freak. He'd become like a father figure to me during the years when I was sending him demos, and he would always give me feedback. A lot of it, was painfully negative. This was a guy that, as an A&R guy, had a stamp that he would stamp on demos that said hobby, and he would actually send that back to people. Just really ruthless. And sometimes I would drop, I'd ride my bike over to his house and drop off a cassette of a new song in his mailbox. By the time I got home, there was already a phone message on my answering machine from Carter that just went. But when he liked something, there was nothing more affirming, because wow, he's not lying, he's not sugarcoating, and everything went great with Beautiful Freak. And then I made Electro-Shock Blues, and Carter hated it, and it was a really, really difficult situation for me. I mean, it was obviously a very difficult point in my life because of what Electro-Shock Blues was about, and about it was while my mom was dying and my sister had died. So, I really believed in the album. I thought, like, this is really where I want to go. This is like part of that conversation I had with David. I want to evolve and change and do different stuff. And Carter basically just wanted me to do Beautiful Freak Part Two, I think, And so I ultimately had to fire Carter, which was extremely awkward and difficult for me because he was more than just a manager to me. But I think it was the right thing to do in hindsight all these years later, because I think that album is why I'm still around. It's like that I was willing to take a turn like that, uh, coming from Beautiful Freak, is why I think that's where I became someone who could last, and you could count on to be an interesting artist. And Carter just didn't see it that way. And to his credit, we remained friends for the rest of his life. And I think he did later kind of get it. We had a good talk towards the end of his life about, that he saw why I chose Lenny Waronker and Mo Austin at DreamWorks, rather than he would have wanted me to go to whoever offered the most money, which was not those guys. And later he said, like, yeah, I get why you went with those guys, because it turned out that they were the guys that signed, like, Prince, for example. They signed Prince, and he didn't have real success till like his fifth album. And they were used to that at Warner Brothers in the old days. They were used to building artists. Let them, grow, and it'll pay off. That that's very old school thinking now, but it was great thinking, if you ask me. And that's exactly why I signed with them. And it turned out to be true. And Carter, when Carter found out about that many years later, I did recoup all the money from the early days of DreamWorks, when I was just really in the red. And once again, Lenny and Mo's philosophy was right. It was paid off. And to this day, Universal owns DreamWorks now, makes money off of me. It was great. Anyway, I ran into Lenny at a bar in my restaurant years after the fact. And I told him, hey, guess what? You were right again. And it was great. Like, we hugged. And, it's a shame that that's like an old fashioned approach to music now.
Electro-Shock Blues was so well received by critics and fans that I mistakenly assumed it was one of his biggest selling albums.
No, it was the opposite. It was a complete commercial bomb, which I expected it to be. And Lenny and Mo, to their credit, expected it to be too. They knew it wasn't going to be a great seller, but they also knew it was important to the bigger picture for me. And when I went in and played it to them, it was very emotional, because they sat there and listened to the whole album all the way through, both of them. And at the end, Mo shook my hand and said, "Thank you, E." And they have a great saying. Their saying was always, "You never get punished by putting out a good record." And this is, I think, a case of that. They just believed in it uh, for what it was, and nobody expected it to be a big hit.
E's always had a knack for creative reinvention. Just when you think you know what he'll do next, he pulls a left turn. And this one's called The Boo Boos. It's his new collaboration with Kate Mattison of the band 79.5, and the two are diving into something fresh, fun, and totally unexpected. How did this collaboration come to be?
I was listening to KCRW late at night one night, and I heard one of a 79.5 song from her band, and I was not familiar with them, and I just loved her voice, and I loved the song. The song was called My Dream, and it was just grabbed me. And just sometime soon after that, I happened to be asked to do a public playlist that I put a 79.5 song on, because I'd started to get into them after hearing that song on the radio. And that led to Kate reaching out to me, I think, just to thank me for putting the song out there.
He reached out later. That was like maybe 2021, 2022.
That's Kate Mattison.
I had been back in New York and doing some more recording and, kind of building myself back up and the band back up. And the song that he found or he heard was called My Dream. And it was a cover of a cover. It was a cover of Sonny Ozuna, Sonny and the Sunliners. And then I think it was like the Harvey Avern, I don't know if I'm saying it correctly, Dozen was the original person who wrote the song. But he heard that and put it on a playlist. And then I was like, oh, man, that's cool. I've been a fan of Eels for years. So then I reached out and I was like, hey, can we open up for you on tour? I was just very I just very New York about my approach. I usually generally am. If I want to try to get something done, I just ask the question. You know what I mean? He found that very flattering, but they already had somebody lined up for tour. And then he was on tour. That tour actually got canceled, I believe, because of like the second wave of Omicron. So then it was the following year. I said, hey, I'm coming to your show. Met him backstage at his show, and then the dialogue began there. And then we just started writing songs back and forth from there.
And then when the next time we played in New York, when the Eels played in New York, she came to the show and we met and we talked. And then at some point we were talking about the idea that our voices would sound good together. And just as an experiment, the first song we wrote was the first song on the album. That's not a thing. As an experiment to see, what it would be like with us on the same song. I did like a voice memo on my phone of me doing the guitar part and me singing the first verse and leaving the second verse blank vocally and sending it to her. And then she sent it back to me with her. She wrote the second verse and sang on it. And we were both like, wow, this is a great mix, and then we just kept going from there. And then it took a long time because we were 3,000 miles apart. It wasn't like we sat in a room for a few days and knocked out a bunch of songs. But after, I don't know, a few months or so, we realized, we got enough songs for an album. We should record these. And then we got together in the same studio and actually recorded them. And that went really quick. It was like, I think 2 weeks. And it's really fun, particularly after the pandemic when we were all making records remotely, because we couldn't be in the same room. It's really fun to get back and have a room full of people making music the old-fashioned way again.
Here's Kate again.
Like when we got to do the demos, that was the coolest. That was the coolest because I am no sound engineer. So I did a lot of like voice memos to, my methods were strange, but I would somehow do vocal overdubs with just using like my computer. And I think I don't remember if I was using my cassette tapes then, but I was mostly just using like voice memos. Or if I wrote a song that, like, for instance, Come On Baby, the demo for that, I just sang E's parts the whole way through and then doubled my part, the harmonies and stuff like that. And, I tried to imitate his voice, which is really, really something.
We got away, baby, rolling together like the stars on the ocean. Stars on the ocean. Hey!
But it's cool, like that's how and then that's like and then we were like, so the first song was That's Not a Thing. And then, that was a good turning point too, for me as a writer, because I kind of was in a little bit of a slump after 79.5's last record in terms of just songwriting. And so you kind of like, beefed it up a little bit and, we're like, all right, let's write some songs back and forth. And then that's how it came about.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of it is, not in my wheelhouse, which is what is exciting to me. Like the second song on the record, Stumbled, which is largely her song, but I'm on it, and that's not like anything I've ever sang on. And some of the stuff, she'd have to really coach me how to sing on some of the stuff, because it was just so different for me. She's a real singer. I'm a caterwauling barker.
You were funny. It never crossed my mind. Where did you come from? You stumbled right in time. You stumbled right in time.
It was like so easy. I can't even tell you, like, this is like how I best describe it. Like, when I have a great show, I literally don't remember any of it. I'm like blacked out up there. And I don't even drink alcohol. I'm serious. Like, I'm just like up there and I'm like, whoa, you're just in the moment, It came together so naturally. Like, as soon as that first demo started, like, that just really lit the match on the thing. It was like, it went by so quickly. I can just say that it was very natural. It was very, there were a couple songs where, like, he was definitely out of his comfort zone and I was definitely out of my comfort zone. That's for sure. But that's what makes stuff great.
And that's it for this week. Thanks to E for talking to us and our special guest star, Kate Mattison. Stay tuned in the next few days for a bonus episode with Kate's story as well. And as always, a quick reminder that you can buy my book on 80s musicians and where they are today, 80s Redux, and its sequel, Live Through That, on 90s artists, wherever you buy your books. And if you like this show, please let us know where you're listening. It always helps others find us. And of course, please subscribe so that you won't miss an episode. Thanks for listening.